The frame circled her like a predator stalking its prey, its movements precise, calculating, and unnervingly fluid for something made of metal. Penelope stood her ground, eyes locked on the machine, reading every tiny shift in its stance. The arena lights glinted off its polished exterior, throwing stark reflections across the blue sand at their feet. The air around them was tense, thick with the anticipation of a fight that could explode at any second. It closed the distance between them slowly, each step measured, its mechanical limbs adjusting with a quiet hum. Penelope's fists remained at her sides, but even the smallest twitch in her muscles caused the frame to hesitate. It slowed, reevaluating, as if weighing its options. It preferred to react rather than initiate, a cold, calculating approach that made it all the more dangerous. After what felt like an eternity, the distance between them shrunk to a critical point, close enough to strike, but still, the frame waited. It was a patient hunter. Watching. Analyzing. Penelope could almost hear the ticking of gears in her head as it calculated every possibility, every potential movement she might make. Fine then, she thought. Let's see what you've got. They begin again. The announcer's voice rang out across the arena, his excitement barely contained. With a sudden burst of speed, Penelope made the first move. She brought her right leg up in a quick arc, launching 2 lightning-fast kicks toward the frame's side. The machine reacted instantly, its metal arms swinging up to block both strikes with ease, the force of the impacts reverberating off its body with a dull metallic thud. It didn't retaliate immediately, waiting for the real attack it anticipated. And it came. Instead of dropping her leg down, Penelope used the momentum from her initial kicks to coil her body. Her right knee tucked and close to her chest, her body twisting to the side. For a split second, everything was still, like the calm before a storm, and then, with the power of a loaded spring, her leg shot out. The strike was aimed directly at the frame's torso, a devastating blow meant to cripple. But the frame was faster than she expected. It dodged to the right, shifting its weight just enough to avoid the full force of the kick. However, Penelope's foot still grazed its side, and she felt the solid resistance of its metal plating beneath her boot. The frame retaliated almost immediately, capitalizing on the momentary imbalance in her stance. It stepped in, quick and calculated, and threw a punch aimed squarely at her jaw. Penelope barely had time to register the attack before the impact rocked her head to the side. Pain exploded through her skull as her foot touched the ground, the punch landing cleanly and driving her back a step. But the frame wasn't done. Seeing the opening, it pressed its advantage. Another punch came, this one faster, aimed higher. This time, she was ready. Her hands shot up to block, but the frame was relentless. It feinted, dropping low, and delivered a punishing strike to her stomach. The force of the blow sent shockwaves through her body, knocking the wind from her lungs. Her muscles screamed in protest, but there was no time to recover. The frame continued its assault, each punch calculated, measured, like clockwork. Its fists came down in rapid succession, one after the other, landing with a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. The pain in her jaw was soon joined by the sharp ache in her stomach. She could feel the bruises already forming under her skin, each point of contact throbbing with heat. The crowd watched in stunned silence, their eyes glued to the fight unfolding before them. Penelope's breath came in short, ragged gasps as she tried to block the oncoming blows. Her defenses were weak, half-formed, and the frame was exploiting every gap. Its punches were unrelenting, like raindrops in a storm, each strike precise, landing either across her face or deep into her stomach. She could feel the strain in her body as each hit forced more and more air from her lungs. The frame's fists were like hammers, striking her down with mechanical efficiency. Metal connected with flesh, and she could feel her own body weakening under the constant barrage. "It seems the frame has completely overwhelmed her," the announcer's voice boomed across the arena, his tone a mix of shock and awe. Penelope staggered backward, each retreating step allowing the frame to advance. It was closing in, step by step, its movements smooth and unbroken, like a relentless predator. Her vision blurred momentarily from the impacts, but she refused to fall. She knew exactly what it was doing, keeping the distance between them short, suffocating her with its proximity, leaving her no room to breathe, no room to recover. The frame's confidence grew with every blow that landed. It could feel victory within its grasp, and it wasn't about to let it slip away. The crowd could sense it too. There was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Penelope was on the defensive, barely managing to keep up, let alone mount a counterattack. Then came the kick. The frame switched tactics suddenly, its legs sweeping through the air in a wide arc. The impact was like a sledgehammer, slamming into the side of her face. Penelope's vision exploded into a blur of metallic colors and arena lights. She felt herself fall, the ground rushing up to meet her. Her hands hit the blue sand, the grains rough against her skin as she struggled to stay upright. Blood dripped from her mouth, the taste of iron thick on her tongue. She spat out a small glob of blood onto the sand and blinked through the haze of pain clouding her vision. A warm, rhythmic drip, drip, drip fell from her split lip, staining the ground beneath her. "Come on," she thought, her frustration and adrenaline boiling over. The announcer hesitated, unsure whether to call the fight or let it continue. The frame showed no signs of stopping. The machine loomed above her, its shadow casting over her like a storm cloud. Before she could move, its fist connected with her mouth, sending another shock of pain through her body. Red stained its robotic knuckles, a stark contrast against the silver plating. The taste of blood filled her mouth, sharp and metallic. Another blow came down, landing just above her cheek, and her vision flashed white with pain. Her ears were ringing now, a constant buzz that drowned out the sounds of the arena. Another blow. Her body screamed in protest. Another blow. Her nerves were on fire, the pain thrumming through her entire being, overwhelming everything else. And then, for one long, glorious moment, it was just her and the pain. Everything else faded away, the crowd, the frame, the announcer, the lights, the noise. There was nothing but the throbbing, pulsating ache in her body, and in that brief moment, it was pure, almost blissful. Enough! The fight is over! "I am Deklar," the announcer's voice was cut off mid-sentence. Penelope's right hand shot up from the sand like a bullet. Her legs tensed, and with a surge of strength, she pushed herself off the ground. The uppercut was perfectly timed, landing squarely beneath the frame's faceplate. The force of the blow sent the machine reeling, stumbling backward. For a second, It almost looked human, its movements awkward, uncoordinated. The frame tried to recover quickly, but Penelope was already moving. She dodged its desperate punch, her body slipping just out of reach. With her right hand, she grabbed its wrist, using the frame's own momentum against it. In one fluid motion, she brought her left elbow down hard into its arm joint. There was a sickening crack as the metal shattered. The crowd gasped in unison. Penelope didn't slow. She moved in closer, her left hand slipping under the frame's now broken arm, looping beneath its armpit. Her grip was ironclad, and she used it to pull the machine's head down toward her rising right fist. The sound of metal smashing against metal echoed through the arena as her fist connected with its faceplate again and again. She didn't stop. Her breath was ragged, her body exhausted, but she kept going. After the fourth punishing strike, she grabbed the back of the frame's head with both hands and drove it down into her knee. The impact was brutal, sending the frame's head snapping back with a violent jerk. It stumbled, disoriented, its systems struggling to stay online. Penelope saw her opening. Turning her body, she took the same stance she had moments before, her right leg lifting once more. With a powerful, decisive kick, she planted her foot squarely in the center of the frame's chest. The impact was like a cannon shot, sending the frame flying backward into the arena wall with a deafening crash. But it wasn't over yet. Penelope was on top of it in seconds, her body moving like a force of nature. She pinned the frame beneath her weight, her fists raining down on its head. Its right arm hung limp, useless, while its left flailed in a desperate attempt to defend itself. Each time it tried to block, Penelope batted its hand away, her fists slamming into the already dented and cracked faceplate. She could hear the metal groaning beneath her blows, pieces of it breaking away. With one final, devastating punch, the faceplate shattered completely, exposing the delicate circuitry underneath. Sparks flew as her fists tore through the frame's inner workings, dismantling it piece by piece. Finally, she stopped. Her breath came in heavy, labored gasps. Sweat dripped from her forehead, mixing with the blood that stained her hands. The crowd was silent, shocked into stillness by the brutality they had just witnessed. Penelope stood slowly, her legs shaking beneath her. Without a word, she grabbed the broken frame by its mangled torso and lifted it onto her shoulder. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she walked toward the edge of the arena, the machine's broken body dangling lifelessly. She reached the edge, stopping just in front of the roboticists and organizers, and unceremoniously dropped the frame at their feet. Its body landed with a hollow, metallic clang, pieces of its shattered faceplate scattering across the sand. Penelope wiped her bloodied lip with the back of her hand and looked up at them. "Nice," she said, a small grin tugging at the corner of her mouth. The crowd erupted, a deafening roar of applause, cheers, and gasps. Even the announcer was speechless. One of the roboticists, his face pale and stunned, stammered, "Thank you for the data. I think it'll make for an excellent fighter." Penelope simply shrugged, her gaze drifting toward the exit. "It was a decent warm-up," she muttered, wiping the blood from her lip. She winced as her fingers brushed a fresh bruise. The organizer hurried over, practically stumbling over himself. "Wait, you've won the fight." His voice was almost breathless with excitement. 6 wins in a row. 20 credits per win, plus a 100 credit bonus. Oh wow, congratulations. He handed her a small chip, his hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline of the fight. Penelope took it, holding it up to the light for a moment, her smirk widening. "Thanks. Maybe I'll stop by again," she said, slipping the chip into her pocket as she turned to leave the arena. As she walked away, the crowd still cheering behind her, she didn't notice the pink and blue figures slipping out of the arena before anyone else could.